Shalom, friends. Steve Benoon here with Israeli News Live, and we're kind of doing this, kind of winging a little bit. My wife needed to use the other computer at the same time, and we actually have more than two. She has her own, but the only problem is I couldn't find the power cord. That's a little bit of an issue. So anyway, I'm going to do a little experimenting here. I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe somebody can help me in the comments if this is possible, because I am new to live streaming here on YouTube. I want to be able to switch over and read to you some other things that are going on in the world. There's several things that are breaking. I don't know if I switch to another tab, will you guys still be seeing this or not? So if nothing else, let's try it out. And hi, everybody. Shalom to everybody there. Already seeing different places there, Australia, different places you guys are at. But we do have some very interesting things going on in the world, and I really want to share those things with you. So very much blessing Ontario, Texas, Canada. It's definitely truly always a global crowd here. And so we just really enjoy having you in here. And speaking of a global crowd, a lot of times the people in Australia, you send me a message that sometimes the timing I do the broadcast is not very good for you guys on a live stream. So I don't even know what time it is. I don't have a clock in front of me right now. So let's see, if it's right on my computer, it says almost 9 o'clock at night here, 8:51 p.m. So in Australia, it's morning. Is that correct? If you guys can let me know there, because I want to find a time where it works for people across the globe at the same time, because so many people listen from all over the world there. In China, and as we see, we had one friend there from Montana. If you would give me an idea where you're at as far as your time frame. I see a lot of you guys already doing that now. New Zealand, it's 6:51 a.m., so almost 7 o'clock in the morning in New Zealand. I guess Australia probably covers a couple of different time zones. Sally in Florida, you're in Eastern time, unless you're in West Florida. That'd be Central and West Florida, I know that. Chicago, Ohio, wow, Africa. So many places around the world there. So maybe if I did do the broadcast there around 10 p.m. here in Prague, 11 p.m. Israeli time, that might be a pretty much a neutral time zone. I know we have people there. We got a brother right there in India as well. God bless you, brother. And that's something we got to keep in mind. We have China, we have India. Now, the people in China can't see the actual video. I have to do transcribing for them to be able to see it. The only problem is I don't have a transcriber right now to do that. We've had that in the past. So if you know how to transcribe and you'd like to volunteer to help on that, and it would not be on every broadcast. They're mainly looking for the teaching type broadcasts that I do, or news that's mixed with teaching. We'd like to load those on Israeli News Live because they do translate those for themselves. They found a way to be able to listen in, and it is a huge group out there. I can't call the brother's name that is with them there, but it's been a tremendous blessing that they've been able to kind of follow what's going on here, and they're believers. They're really a precious group there. So anyway, Ireland at 7:52. Well, of course, guys, you guys aren't far from me. You're only an hour different in time there. So Texas, you guys in Texas, I believe, are probably about 7 to 8 hours different in time, depending on what part of Texas you were actually in. Texas is another place that covers all over the world. So Holbrook, Arizona, Mississippi, Maryland, Holland. Gee, Manetti. I get on here and half time I don't pay attention to where everybody, or don't think, I not so much pay attention, but I don't think about all the different places where people are from. Anybody from Russia listening in? Be really curious about that one there. Alabama, well, that is my home. I'm actually from, my mother wanted to make sure I was born right, proper, and took me to a hospital to be born in Northwest Florida, but I was raised in Southern Alabama. Most all my family is from Atmore, Alabama, and I grew up in Castleberry, in Uriah, Alabama. So, but anyway, let's get right into this. I don't want to waste time with just talking small talk here. I'm going to try something real quick. Let's see if it works. And I'll be curious to know. I assume the camera will stay on me, but let's just see something here. If I switch over to this, now I just switched over to a screen. I don't know if it shows you my screen, and or let me come back and see. Did it still work? Did I lose anything, or did it stop working? Guys, let me know. Okay, so it shows me. Thank you. So we didn't lose anything. I didn't get it. That way I can kind of switch over and at least speak about what's going on. I can't show you on the screen and behind me. I probably could, but for some reason I can't figure out how to get this computer to share the screen. So I'm an old guy, so I'm not the most high tech guy there is in the world. So. All right, so let's get right into what's going on. I'm going to go into the issue about the chemical attack here in just a moment, but very concerning news that I just got a hold of. A Russian journalist, his name is, gosh, let me get his name again here. His name is Maksim Borodin. He died. He succumbed to his injuries on April the 12th, a few days ago. Supposedly, he committed suicide out of his 5-story apartment building window. And then, of course, he never recovered. He went into a coma and then died as a result of his injuries. That is just completely absurd. And I say this because it is extremely suspect based on the information that we're seeing about this Russian journalist here. He was very well known for exposing corruption in the police there. This is actually on a website called www.rferi.org. But at any rate, he was 32 years old. He died on April the 15th. And it was the Sverdlovsk Oblast police spokesman said it was unlikely that this story is of a criminal nature. I think it's a cover-up. I'll just tell you just like it is. I really think it's a cover-up. And I know this is probably not something that would probably be national headlines, but let me tell you why it's important to me. Because a friend of this journalist here, Vyacheslav Boshkov, wrote on Facebook on April 15th that Borodin contacted him at 5 a.m. on April the 11th and said his building was surrounded by security forces wearing camouflage and a face mask. He said that Borodin was alarmed but not hysterical or drunk. Borodin reportedly said that he believed his apartment was about to be searched and that the security officers were waiting for a court order. He asked Boshkov to find him a lawyer. An hour later, however, Borodin called back this friend of his and said he had been mistaken and that the security officers were conducting some sort of drill. He said, I didn't call him after that. And Boshkov wrote, although I was waiting for him to write something on Facebook, but he didn't write anything. And on the 13th, media reported that Maksim had been found under his balcony and he was in an emergency room. Borodin regularly wrote on crime and corruption. In recent weeks, he was the very journalist that was really exposing the deaths of the Russian contractors that were killed back on February the 7th. And he was actually naming names of these soldiers that were killed on the Wagner group. That's troubling. Now, here's where the question comes in. If he was murdered because of exposing the Wagner group, then it's much deeper issue going on. Or was he murdered because he was exposing police corruption in Russia, in the town perhaps he lived in or other parts of Russia, and it would be more of a localized vendetta maybe, and they took him out. But it's troubling period. This is why I've always said, listen, I'm all about telling people the truth. I don't care who it is, where they are, anything. And as I said many times before, when it comes to the war in Syria, I've taken up for Russia quite a bit because I believe they've been falsely accused when it comes to this. But I've also said I wouldn't want to live in Russia either because my wife grew up in communism. And I realize Russia is not, quote unquote, a communist nation any longer. But still, it's a pretty tough place to live. You're not going to have freedoms, and but very troubling that this journalist, I mean, to me, it's obvious the guy was murdered, and now he's been covered up. Now, of course, the police, they argue, well, the door was locked. It was locked from the inside. There was no evidence of forced entry. Well, that's really easy to stage as well, isn't it? So I kind of know a little bit about those type things, but very troubling indeed. And I really myself, if we have any influence whatsoever on the Russian government, I really, there should be an inquiry on this man's death, and it shouldn't just be brushed under the rug as he's some type of he died, because he committed suicide. No suicide, no nothing. So very troubling indeed. I mean, you would think that Russia would be moving further down the road nowadays than for these type things to be happening. And I know it happens. It's not the only case that has happened. There's other cases that come up as well. This one caught my attention. It is a journalist. So as a journalist myself, it's very troubling to hear about this. The man does not have the ability to have freedom of speech without his life being endangered. But let's be frank about it. I deal with the same issue as well. I may be an American, but there's a lot of things that I say that there are certain people in power that would love to see some kind of accident happen, and then I would no longer be here because I'm causing them a major amount of issues. And I do get threats. I get threats, not just idle threats either. I've had some very serious threats before, and I've even have threats that, I can't say where they come from, but I've had other threats as well because of the things that I expose. So, I have to kind of keep an eye over my shoulder for the things that we're saying here. But the thing is we're interested in telling the truth and not interested in just saying a bunch of garbage there. And so getting to the issue then, what's going on in Syria, I do believe that this has truly been a staged provocation of a chemical weapons attack. And I believe that the U.S., along with the British forces and French forces, utilize this opportunity to attack a country, a democratic country there, for whatever purpose that they're trying to do this for, really to overthrow President Bashar al-Assad at this point in time. RT is reporting that Moscow's irrefutable evidence of the chemical attack in Syria Duma was staged. The Russian envoy to the OPCW actually came out and stated that we don't just have the level of confidence, high level of confidence, as our Western partners uniformly put it. We have irrefutable proof that there was no chemical attack in Douma on April the 7th. Russian ambassador to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, Alexander Shulgin, said to a special meeting at the UN Chemical Watchdog's Executive Council. I'm curious to know what the evidence is. I do believe that it was staged myself. There's just too much evidence that's already pointed to that. Also, the fact that U.S. airstrikes had been coming out saying that they took out the very place where Bashar al-Assad was manufacturing in the Scientific Research Center for the chemical weapons, as well as the storage facility for the chemical weapons, which had, if this was really true, would have caused a humanitarian disaster, as you guys may very well know. I mean, think about it. Again, like I said the other day, that's like an insult to our intelligence to say that they bombed the storage facility for all these chemical weapons. All right, well, if you bomb a storage facility for all these chemical weapons, that's kind of take it like this in mind. when they have a train derail in the United States that is that has chemicals on board these trains, and there's a leak in it, they have to evacuate the area, sometimes days, because of the spill, and maybe it's ammonia or something like that, or some kind of lethal chemical that can really hurt the public very bad. So the question is if they really bombed a chemical weapon storage facility, and let's say it has sarin gas, chlorine gas, etc., well, there goes a whole lot more deaths, wouldn't you think? Wouldn't it be logical, especially when this particular facility happens to be in a densely populated, civilian populated area? It's not like it was way out in the middle of the desert, nothing was around. It kind of been a little bit more realistic if they had said that. If I sit there and I think to myself sometimes, if the United States, Britain, or France, whichever one concocted the idea, was going to say, look, we're going to take out this particular building and we're going to say, they're going to manufacture something, they're going to lie about it, and we're going to say this is a chemical weapons storage facility. Why not take then and find some rogue building way out about 50 miles away from civilization, bomb that one and say, we took it out. It's not going to be a very safe place to be around for a while, but thank God it was away from the civilian population. Then maybe we might believe it. But no, right in the middle of town, they blow up a building and say, we took out the chemical stockpiles that, he happens to have. I mean, we're already knowing that Russia was working with Syria to dispose of their chemical stockpiles, and they have to be done in such a careful manner so that you don't have this type of situation. And then to tell us you're just going to go blow the place up? No. And in fact, according to the Syrian government, the research building that they blasted, they claimed it was chemical weapons, was their research building for cancer, their drugs for cancer that they're going to fight. By the way, Syria, if you're listening, get you some high dose vitamin C. That'll treat your cancer. You don't need this chemotherapy and all this garbage that America shoves down the world's throat there that only kills people and does them absolutely no good. There's a lot of other cures for cancer that's a heck of a lot better. And my wife is a witness to that herself now. She's still, by the way, for those of you that are curious about how Yana is doing, she is doing much better. She will be returning to the United States soon, and for a short period of time there, but she does have to continue her treatment for about another 9 months still yet. Anyway, God bless you, and thank you for because so many people are always asking about how is she doing. She is doing much, much better now, thanks to those of you that have listened and helped her in being able to get the treatment that she has been undergoing. Also, going back to this one issue, though, the Russians, though, on this particular issue about the chemical attack, have come right out and have been very blunt in saying the British government coordinated this chemical weapons attack. And when they're talking about irrefutable evidence, I'm assuming that evidence is probably going to be pointing the finger right in the face of those that were involved. Now, I'm curious to know whether or not they're going to speak about those prisoners of war that have allegedly, the reports have come out saying that they have taken these prisoners of war. But also the Russian government is saying that the UK could not have carried this out without the direct involvement of the United States. A lot of accusations coming out as regards to this. And, I've always suspected the jihadists are the ones that are carrying out the attacks. I realize that they are funded and backed by the US and the UK. But as to whether or not that direct involvement in this alleged situation where there were U.S. and British forces on the ground in eastern Ghouta with this group there, and even Israelis, we're still waiting to see if that evidence can be corroborated or will ever come out to the public in a very open way. Don't know about that as much as of yet. There's still a lot of celebration going on as well in Syria for the downing of more than 70% of those missiles that were fired in by the three coalition nations there that were firing against the Syrian nation. And the Panzer S-1 repelled U.S. strikes in Syria showed a 100% effectiveness, according to the Russian MOD. Now, that was actually published on Al-Masr, I can't even say it, AMN News, I'll just say it like that. It was reported there, the successful rate of that there. It's not being brought out of mainstream media, and that's something I don't understand why the mainstream media is not willing to really say what is going on there. But it is definitely, there was a tremendous amount of these missiles knocked out of the sky. Now, generally, we're only seeing they're only speaking about that it's the Syrian government that actually knocked these down. I don't think that that's actually correct. I don't see how the Syrian government could just do this on their own without the help of Russia and knock down that many bombs there. So, we'll have to kind of watch that, see how that plays out there. We're also seeing a big issue coming up still too with this issue with the Saudi government, and I'm watching closely Turkey, what they're doing. It's very troubling, as I mentioned to you guys yesterday, how that the Turkish government, this whole plot that they have done when it comes to Greece, that really caught me by surprise when I shared that with you guys the other day. I hadn't really given it that kind of thought before, but it was almost like getting a revelation when I do biblical insights and stuff like that, where God shows me a lot of things there. That's basically the way I received this information when it came to Turkey. I wasn't even thinking about it. It just came to me that what Erdogan was doing was that Greece was that the tensions between Turkey and Greece was to take Greece out in the event that a full-fledged war were to strike up in Syria, in order to stop them from possibly siding with Russia and using the S-300 system against the coalition forces there. And at the same time, it also come to my heart there that what was going on with Afrin was that the U.S. stood down and did not interfere with Turkey taking out the YPG and the Kurdish fighters there inside of Afrin, because that was the only force truly blocking the way. And when I say the only force, it's not to say the Syrian government was not blocking the way, but the Kurds were the people that the NATO, not so much NATO, but the US, UK, and France would not bomb the Kurds. And if they were getting ready to do a ground assault, which was exactly what they were planning on doing to start with back in March, according to the reports we've been seeing coming out there, that they were actually intending on staging the chemical weapons attack, followed by an air attack, then followed by a ground invasion to topple Damascus. And, it takes months for them to plan these things. And, it's not to say that the NATO alliance under the command of the United States military there is not really carefully think these things out. And as I begin to look at this, and I begin to remember, okay, they had moved the military equipment down through Jordan. They brought all the military equipment in Jordan. I also noticed after Turkey took out the Kurds in Afrin, then we begin to see huge convoys of military equipment coming in and going beyond Afrin, down towards Idlib. And as I'm watching this, everywhere the Turkish military is going are to the areas where the forces that oppose Bashar al-Assad. And I'm seeing this, and then I'm start putting all these things together, and then I've had so many of you guys that'll write me and say, Steve, did you not pay attention that Turkey has been in this rift with Greece here recently? And I saw it, but I just hadn't had the really chance to really put any focus on it. And sometimes you kind of get glad that you don't, especially when there's something that comes to your heart afterwards, because you realize if I had maybe put a focus on there, I maybe wouldn't have picked up on the revelation about what was really happening. And so then that's when I began to realize this was a really coordinated effort. And if I'm not mistaken, Greece is actually part of NATO as well. But the thing is, Greece is really falling out of good relations because of the situation with the European Union and their failing economy. And the European Union finally quit bailing them out so much and kind of left them out to dry. And that's when Russia stepped in, trying to help break this alliance. And in doing so, that's what I think made a tremendous, how would you put it? It caused a nervousness for NATO partners. They realized, what if for some reason Greece decides to side with Russia if we get into an all-out war? And so I think that's why Turkey had this rift with Greece already. It was a provocation. If in the event something goes down, Turkey could actually justify attacking Greece, and NATO would turn a blind eye to it while they deal with the situation over in Syria. So things have not worked out exactly the way they intended, but I am sure they're not going to give up on this idea. They're still going to take this, they're going to take Syria down. As General Wesley Clark said, there were certain nations they want to take down. And I don't think the game plan has changed whatsoever. Now, they are losing public support. And that's what's fascinating to me. I mean, I was listening to Jerry Corbyn, the British, he's the head of the Labour Party for the British government, very much against this attack. And as I was watching their live broadcast on this today, the British government they've probably still got a majority for the attack, but it's a borderline. I think it's like about 44% of the British people in Parliament are against it because they don't believe there was enough evidence. But not all of them are brave enough to really bring it out because they're afraid of being booed down by their constituents, or not the constituents, but by their fellow partners there in their Parliament. Even in the United States, we see on Fox News, Tucker Carlson coming out against what's going on there. We see Alex Jones, who has been very much for President Trump, turn against President Trump over this particular war. And I don't listen to Alex myself. You see a lot of his things on Twitter, so occasionally you'll see something that might catch your eye. You might say, I'm just curious to see what they say there. But more and more, there are so many besides alternative media, but even in mainstream media, we're starting to see a little bit of push in that opposite direction. And at the same time, for every push that tells you that this has been a fabrication and that the entire war in Syria, this to take down Bashar al-Assad has been staged from the beginning, then there's also that side that they send out there to try to debunk you or to bring you down. Say, for example, Vanessa Beeley, Ava Bartlett, probably two of the best journalists on the field in Syria to begin with. One's Canadian, one's a British. I think Vanessa's British and Ava Bartlett is Canadian. But I think Ava was actually born in America, if I'm not mistaken, but she lives in Canada. Could be wrong on that. But nonetheless, because these women in their journalistic work have done such a fabulous job in exposing, say, the white helmets and the staged chemical attacks and interviewing the Syrians on the ground. And in fact, Ava Bartlett speaks fluent Arabic herself, so she knows firsthand. She doesn't just have to have a translator. She can talk to the people directly. And then what do you have? You see the different media out there like Washington Post, etc. They're trying to, in mainstream media, they're bringing these people up now and they're trying to discredit their work. I have my own enemies out there that they have sent up to try to discredit what we're doing. And what's it for? It's not that the people necessarily that are doing these things are really bad people, but there's an agenda. And that agenda is to try to shape public opinion. In order for the United States to be able to go to war against a country, they have to have your public opinion support. It's just like in the case of going to war with Iraq. We ended up with 9/11. Well, what did Iraq have to do with 9/11? And to begin with, there's so much evidence that has come out over the years that 9/11 was an inside job. And when I say inside job, does it mean that Americans did it? Not necessarily, no. Just like the school shooting. That's something I'll probably really have to say for Patreon. Excuse me, I was starting to call it something else there. Patreon. We did our first little video on there, but I really want to get into the issue about gun rights there. But I'm hearing that if you start saying too much on YouTube directly about that, they'll be shutting us down for talking about it. But one of the students there, I will say this, one of the students there has agreed to come on Israeli News Live. But whether or not I can bring that here and not get shut down or not, I don't know. We'll see. But at any rate there, all these things are staged. And when I say staged, doesn't mean in some cases people are not getting killed or getting hurt. Sure they are. In the case of the shooting in Florida, there were people that died there. There's no doubt about it. I remember there was the attack that happened down in France. People were saying, oh, that was staged, it never really happened and everything. I went there myself and I found the bullet holes in the trees. And I'm thinking to myself, I did a broadcast on it. I showed you guys, where you could see some type of high-powered rifle or something. I knew from, I was specialist with firearms, so I knew that, pretty much the type caliber and stuff that was used at that particular restaurant where these people died at. So I knew that there was real gunfire. This was not just some staged event. Not to say it wasn't a false flag, but real people died in it. And they don't care. And when I said, I got off track, actually, what I wanted to say. I wanted to come back to this thing about the school shooting. Let me say this. Isn't it interesting how that they're wearing masks and stuff like that, but they're dressed like police? Isn't it interesting? And I'll say this much here because I got to be careful what I say here. Isn't it interesting that the sheriff there, Mr. Israel, is very close to the Muslim community? All right, now just think about, I'll say it like this here, won't go into it here, we'll save it for the other channel there, but let me just say it like this here. Who hates America? Who do you think they could actually get? Because the one teacher that actually said, why are the police shooting the kids? But she couldn't see them because they had a face mask on. And this young guy, they put the blame on it on, said he had voices in his head telling him to carry this attack out. Well, yeah, they probably did that for him to let him be the fall guy. So this young man is probably sitting in prison and probably never pulled the trigger. I wouldn't doubt that he didn't show up with a gun, though. But gunfire was still going off when he was walking down the hallway with that one girl. Remember all that kind of good stuff? So, so go back to the situation, though, with the Twin Towers. And what do you have there? What about Mossad agents that were there, that were caught filming the event? Listen, I love Israel. I love my people, but I can't sit there and just condone everything that happens. What I love is the fact that God made a promise that we would return to the land in the last days, but we would return to see the coming of the Messiah. But he also said, too, there's a lot of other prophecies about what we would suffer and how that we would go through a tremendous struggle and a trial, and Jacob's trouble, for example, and also how that 2/3 of the people in Israel would be killed. Has anybody ever thought maybe perhaps because of our leaders would provoke something that would cause this to actually manifest itself? we're in a very, very trying time right now, and we've got to stand up and we've got to say what's right, what's true. And regardless of how much it hurts, somebody's got to tell it like it is. I'm not here to tell you something to kind of get you cheerleadered up in order to go fight and kill a bunch of people over in the Middle East. But they have a lot of channels out there. And I'm telling you, the US government knows the power of alternative media. They know the power of it. Just like the Vatican, the Jesuits know very well, they knew how to take control of America. The Jesuits knew how to bring the churches back under the Catholic Church. And you know what they were doing? They were infiltrating all of the different denominational groups, whether it be Pentecostals, whether it be the Evangelicals, the Methodists, whichever group it was, they infiltrated them. Alberto Rivera, look him up. He tells you all about that. Their infiltration plot. They infiltrate governments, everything. Alberto Rivera said that he was taught when he was a Jesuit that when you see a president take the oath of office and face the obelisk in Washington, D.C., then you will know the Jesuits had won and conquered Washington, D.C. Anybody know who that was? Just if you know who it was, write the name of the guy right there in the comment section. I'm curious to know, does anybody actually know which president was the one that faced the obelisk? And the funny thing is the president that did it is probably the most celebrated president in modern times. It wasn't Obama. It was Reagan. That's right, Abe. Abel. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite see it. It's going up so fast, can't see. It was actually President Ronald Reagan. So Moonbeam, you had got it as well. That's exactly who it was, Ronald Reagan. And isn't it interesting that Ronald Reagan was involved with what was called the Holy Alliance with Pope John Paul and the collapse of the Soviet Union? Isn't it interesting how that the Soviet Union was able to be collapsed without even firing a shot? If a Jesuit controls a country, he doesn't have to fire a shot to overthrow it. The Jesuits overthrew the Russian nation, the Tsars, by first killing off the Tsars, and then they took and implanted their own Lenin and Stalin into the country, turned it into an atheistic country, because for the Catholic Church, they would rather have it be an atheistic country than they would it to be a religious country if they can't control the religion. That's where we are, right? So all these things that are going on in the world today, they're trying to get your support. So they infiltrate things. They infiltrate churches, they infiltrate governments, and their whole point is to make sure public opinion is steered in a certain direction to achieve the end goal. And for one reason or another, they are very much wanting to overthrow the entire Middle East. And Iran is definitely going to go down. You can count on it. They're going to take Iran down. And, there's one thing I like about being live. One way I don't like being live, because, a lot of times when I'm sitting in here and I'm just recording and I'm preparing them before we actually started doing this live broadcast type stuff, I'd get in here and I'd start recording. I'd make so many mistakes. I'd have to hit stop, start again, stop, start again. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I thought to myself, if I was ever live, I'd make a total fool of myself. But there's another side of this nice about being live. It's like sitting down and talking to a friend. And I do like that. I like the opportunity just to sit here and talk with you guys and share some things that I think about. But I wish I could think of where I was headed to, though, with all this. But the thing is when we're looking at the situation, their agenda, when it comes, or no, I know where I was going to go. It was Iran. All right, I remember now. Isn't it interesting? As bad as they're wanting to take down Iran right now, when it came to Donald Trump, he gets typed as Cyrus, an Iranian leader. So, I mean, Persian, we should say, not an actual Iranian leader, but it's the same people. It's no different. And I'm really wondering about that. They want to blow Iran up because Israel wants to blow Iran up. And yet they take the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and they type him as Cyrus. And I found that fascinating to begin with, because there's things that I guess a lot of people don't realize when they type Donald Trump as being Cyrus. One, it's an open sign to you guys. It should tell you that he will be the president that they want to initiate building of the third temple. Building of the third temple is going to bring about an Antichrist spirit. So I don't see anything good about that in the first place. But they're supposed to be built regardless, one way or the other. Secondly, what's really interesting to me, and I've been there in Britain, I've been there at the museum there where the Cyrus cylinder is actually kept. Now, the Cyrus cylinder is a cylinder that was commissioned by Cyrus. And he talks about one of his conquests on this cylinder. And even though we know, biblically speaking, if we look at our Bible, the Bible says that Yahweh says to Cyrus to return the Jewish people to rebuild their temple. So I don't doubt that God actually influenced Cyrus to actually initiate the reconstruction of the second temple. But what I find interesting, though, when people get all excited and they type Donald Trump as being Cyrus, is on the Cyrus cylinder itself, Cyrus tells the world his God is Marduk. So regardless if Yahweh is the one that was behind making sure that Cyrus returned the Jews to their homeland to rebuild their temple, he wasn't serving that God, Yahweh. He was not serving the God of Israel. He was serving Marduk, and he was very proud of it. And he was not just serving Marduk, he had another God as well. I forget the other one that's mentioned on his cylinder. But I sit there and I think to myself, people are so excited about Donald Trump, and they make a coin in Israel, and they put Cyrus on one side, Donald Trump on the other side. And I think to myself, okay, then is Donald Trump's God Marduk then? Because if you're going to type him out, maybe the shoe fits. So, but anyway, the whole thing is they want to take down Iran. And, unfortunately, that's going to happen. And I say unfortunately, I know a lot of people probably wouldn't like that for me to say that, because they say, Steve, Iran hates Israel. Yeah, Iran hates Israel and Israel hates Iran. And the two of them are at each other's throat all the time. But I really don't think that Iran would be as big a threat if we weren't threatening them as well. But there again, we're looking at biblical prophecy, and we're looking at a time that we're living in now to where it's not going to be long before all the nations are going to turn against Israel. And you can't help but wonder. I know that when we had when we were there in France, me and my wife, we covered, what was it, year before last, I think it was, when we were covering the nations. 70 something nations came down when Obama was still in power, and they all went against Israel. But it's fixing to come to a head again. And I really think that we need to keep an eye on Turkey right now as well. What Erdogan is doing. In fact, by the way, he also, once again, he called on, when he was at the G20 summit there, he was calling on ditching the US dollar and saying that every country should go to a gold-backed standard. In fact, he seemed to indicate almost about doing away with global currencies, period. And, that's troubling. It's very troubling when, I would, when I say not troubling, a gold standard would be the smartest way to go to begin with. But when it comes to a gold standard, the United States, we'd totally crumble, because we don't have any gold anymore. We lie to the American people, and we say that we have the huge stockpile of gold, but we don't. In fact, when Germany asked for their gold back, the U.S. said, well, you have to wait about 10 years before you can get it. When Texas asked for their gold from the gold reserves, the U.S. says you're not going to get it. So, we don't have money. Steve Pigeon, when he was on the other day, one of the points he had made, I don't know if he made it on there, if he made it with me privately, but he said that we no longer, when it comes to the U.S. dollar, he said we are, I forget how much money, he said by certain year coming up, we'll be paying $1 trillion in interest on the money we're borrowing. And I forget how often that was. But the thing that was troubling, though, when Steve said that, though, he said, but the point is, he said, we're not borrowing money. He said, we're telling the world we're borrowing. We're telling our people we're borrowing the money. He said, but they're not. They're only printing the money. So if we're only printing money and we're not really borrowing the money, so for example, Saudi Arabia, Trump goes in there, he does this huge sale of weapons, but we're not borrowing, we're just printing money. How much longer is this going to last? Where are we going to end up at? It's very, very troubling days we're living in, friends. And I share this with you very sincerely, that we're about, I think, to hit a major, major collapse. And, the only thing that keeps us going still, unfortunately, is war. And as long as America maintains its superiority quite frankly, as an imperialistic nation, that's what is keeping the rest of the world. That's what keeps our economy alive, I should say, is our imperialistic ambitions. And the U.S. has to maintain the global dominance, because if we didn't maintain the global dominance, the gig would be up. And the thing is more and more of the world is starting to see that. Russia and China now are no longer using U.S. dollar for trading on the oil. That's crippling our economy. I see it myself. I think right before when Trump announced that he was going to strike Syria, we saw the dollar go up in Europe here. Because we go to the ATM, that's the easiest way for me to see it, and I can see the exchange rate. The exchange rate actually went up to 20 crowns for a dollar. And it's normally down to about 17 to 18 crowns. But when I first came here to Prague 3 years ago, you could get about 24 crowns for a dollar. That's how big of a drop it's been. And we've seen about a 20% drop in value. And that's even the same with the euro. Doesn't mean that the euro is any better either, by the way. And I don't know how they work their particular system there, but Russian money and Chinese money both supposedly are backed by gold, or at least Russia probably is. I don't know China. They say too that China's got a lot of issues. I'm rambling on here, and actually I just wanted to check on some things real quick as well. I have you guys on here before we close this broadcast out there, because there is so many things that is happening in the world. It's kind of, there's a lot of fronts that you have to keep your eye on. And one thing I do want to say too, that's just not going away, and that's Ukraine and Donetsk region there. That is a very volatile region, friends. And I've not had a chance really to say it, but they are at war constantly. And Russia more and more has been moving in to back up the Donetsk and the Luhansk regions there. They both declared their autonomy. And that's another powder keg. And it's only a matter of time before that powder keg is going to explode. Very, very troubling. And also, too, by the way, Israel did come out and publicly admit to striking the T4 air base there where Iranians were stationed at inside of Syria. They have came out today, and they did say that they did strike this base. And we're in a really serious time, friends, very serious time. And I'm going to be going deeper into things tomorrow. We probably will run live, but I'll have the other computer back up and running here where we can put things up on the screen and behind you there so you can see what's going on and see where we're at there. As I listened, by the way, too, as I was listening to Theresa May speak today, you know, they are so grounded in on this issue of the airstrikes in Syria. I'm afraid what's going to happen if the OPCW goes in there, and Russia's already saying they want them to be neutral and unbiased in their reporting and in their findings. But, you know, you never know who's paid off. And that's where the concern is. You just don't know who's fabricating what and what's going to come next. I'm really concerned they've got something up their sleeve. And I say that because, you know, President Trump has just made the announcement again. He wants to get out of Syria. He wants to get his people out of there as soon as he possibly can. Now, let me just share with you what really concerns me about that statement. There's two things. One is that when President Trump said he wanted to get out of Syria before, or actually at the time before that, right at the time of Khan Sheikhoun, he was saying that, oh, we want Abbas to stay in power. We can work with that. We're going to deal with that. That went on for about 2 weeks, and then boom, Khan Sheikhoun false flag again, and Trump launched 59 cruise missiles into Syria. And then the situation comes up. The State Department says put a spotlight on East Ghouta. And then they give that about 30 days to kind of simmer down so you forget what the State Department says. And then suddenly, about 2 weeks in before it happens, Trump says, we need to get out of Syria. I'm bringing the troops home. We're going to let the other guys take care of it. And then bam, another chemical attack happens. That's a setup. That's a setup. And what is it? It's a setup to work on public opinion. It causes the people to say, look, President Trump, he's a good man. He wants to get out of Syria. This is what we voted for him for. It keeps the evangelical community right there at his side. And instead of questioning, you have to remember, President Trump, he's just a man. It doesn't make him anybody special or anybody better. He's been elected by the people. He was put into office. And he based on a lot of promises that he made, but he's got to make it look like he's trying to keep those promises in order to keep you on board with what his agenda is. All right. So now he's saying he's wanting to get out again. Will he actually keep that? I don't think he will. I think there's something up. Now, there is one thing though that did make me, and this is what I wanted to share with you, that really concerned me too about his sudden wanting to pull out of Syria. Because, there are some politicians back in the United States that they don't think, even though they're not for the war, they don't think that just pulling out of Syria is the wisest thing to do because you create a vacuum. Well, I think Russia could take care of the vacuum personally, but that's not so much the issue. Why would President Trump really want to bring his troops back home? Why have they talked about putting the National Guard on the southern border? They say our southern border is not very well protected. Now, I'm just speaking out loud to you guys, or thinking out loud with you guys. Do you think maybe it's not the fact they're worried about people coming to America? Do you think maybe it's they're wanting to make sure you don't leave America? Have we ever thought about that? That's it. I just caught it as I glanced up there. Kay just in. That's exactly right. When President Trump originally mentioned that he was going to bring the troops home, and it was unexpected, I didn't expect that there would be a false flag attack, other than the fact that we know Russia had been saying for about a week that they had the intelligence that it was coming. We didn't know at that time, though, that they had captured American and British soldiers, and through interrogation, they had found out that this is exactly what they were going to do. But nonetheless, as I'm watching what's going on right now, and again, Trump is talking about bringing his people back home, and this whole major drive to disarm the American public, I am very concerned that what is coming is a collapse is coming. He needs the military home to contain the civil unrest that will follow. The disarming of the nation will be the only way they can control it. And that's all in preparation of a new world order. And as far as the World War III, I know that's something that they would probably love to happen. It would definitely help keep America stabilized in the economy for the foreseeable future. But of course, thousands of lives will be lost. And I'm not saying that it's over yet. We still may go into it. But that's another issue altogether, too. Another issue. It's a very serious situation that we're dealing with. And I'm very concerned about what's going on. I will be, tomorrow, I'm going to be really doing some serious studying, trying to find out if there's other things in prophecy. It seems like every time I open the Bible, the Lord is just so kind. If I could share with you as much as is revealed to me on a daily basis, it would just make your head would spin around. I mean, it is unbelievable the things that I see daily. And I don't know why. I don't know why the Lord shows me these things. I don't even know why I'm sitting here talking like this, but I'm very concerned about what's happening. And, but you guys pray for us. We do need your prayers very sincerely. And because I don't want to mislead anyone. My heart's desire, I'll look at Ezekiel 11, sure will, Tracy. My heart's desire is to be as honest as I possibly can, to see Israel's eyes open. And in fact, the book that I'm writing, I have come to realize it's more than just the Jewish people that need their eyes open to recognize who the Messiah is. We also, even the Gentile people, the house of Israel that has also been in exile, that has believed Yeshua to be the Messiah, we need our own eyes opened as well. Anyway, I won't hold you guys any longer. I've been here so long just rambling on, but I just thought I'd share some thoughts with you there since I don't have the other one to stay more focused and on track here. We'll be talking to you guys very soon. God bless you. If you are blessed by this and you do want to support this work, just visit our website, israelinewslive.org. Even right there at the YouTube channel you're on now, right above the subscribe link, you can help us out here. And don't, hey, don't ever be ashamed. Even if you just say, hey, I want to send $1, that's okay. That's okay. It's a blessing. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate it. God bless you. We love you. Thank you, and thank you for watching. Shalom and good evening. And there's no way I could speak to every one of you, but I sure wish I could. I really do. Y'all are such a wonderful group. God bless you, and good evening to all of you.